Okay, you're all set.
Good afternoon. I am going to call to order a special emergency school Zoom meeting of the Gloucester Public School Committee. Today is Tuesday, May 18th, 2021. It is 12:04 noon time. Consistent with governor's orders, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings such as that an in-person meeting of the Gloucester School Committee is not possible. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. In the event that a live transmission proves unworkable for any reason, an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the meeting will be made available on the city's website as soon as possible. Maria, can you call attendance, please?
Sure. Ms. Watson,
Here.
Ms. Weason,
Here.
Kathy Clancy. I'll come back to her.
Yeah, she's joined, she's here, but she was waiting to get settled in. Here she is now.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Favazza,
Here.
Chairman Pope. I believe he's on vacation.
Yes, yep,
Ms. Prince
here.
and Mayor Taken.
Here.
Thank you, Maria. So as Maria just stated, Jonathan Pope is not attending this meeting today as he has a planned vacation scheduled. And note that there is a quorum of the school committee. Everyone else is here. So we called this special emergency meeting according to open meeting law, which allows us to waive the 48-hour notice due to the unanticipated announcement by Governor Baker yesterday, stating that students are no longer required to wear masks outside, whether it be for recess or outdoor learning and for sports. So as you know, we have a policy for face coverings that says masks are to be worn on ground school property at all times. So we found ourselves in a conflicting situation where the governor has an order and our policy states differently. So having a discussion with Superintendent Lummis late last night when this happened, or late afternoon yesterday, we decided it was important to have a meeting so that we can provide guidance to school administration so they know how to address the issues of students not wearing or wearing their masks while they're outside. We are grateful that we have Karen Carroll, the Public Health Director, joining us tonight, in addition to Jeff Paco. I appreciate, we have Greg Bach on the line as well. And I appreciate your ability to attend this last minute meeting. And of course, are willing to hear any advice or any recommendations you can give us as we deliberate on this issue. To give the school administration some advice today on how to move forward. There may be a need for a motion at some point, so let's start by maybe hearing from the superintendent and others, and then we can start a discussion on next steps on how to move forward on this issue, unless someone else has any other requests. Nope.
Okay, great. Thank you, Melissa. So I'm going to just start with a quick update about COVID in the schools. Then we'll switch to Karen on the update in terms of the data around the system, around the city rather, and then we'll jump into what has just recently been shared from the DESE and also MIAA about athletics. So let me share my screen quickly. So first off, update about the schools. So of course, we continue to do a fantastic job on educating as many students as possible, almost all our students in in-person school settings. So we're doing a fantastic job on that. We continue to do that, especially with the high school this week going in full as of yesterday. So that's going quite well. And as we said from the beginning, our decisions need to be based on facts, science, and data. And the updates that have been received from the governor, has announced are certainly based in facts, science, and data. And Karen Carroll will help us understand those in a little bit because she'll talk about the declining metrics across the board. In terms of our update, so Karen will tell us more about this, but there are 13 active cases across the city as of yesterday. So you can see it's the lowest since November, and it continues to go down. You can see a regular descent from March into, so that should be May 18th, sorry. Getting a little confused on my months here. May comes after April, I'll have to change that. And then the big news as of this morning. So as of this morning, no active cases in our schools. That might change, okay? But as of this morning, 0 active cases in our schools. I think that's the first time we've been there since October. There might have been, anyway, I think that's the first time since then. So that's all green because there are no more cases right now in our schools as of this morning. So let me stop there. And then we'll go into what MIA said and what the Department of Elementary has said in a little bit. But first, let me hand it over to Karen. Let me stop my sharing. Karen, what can you tell us about just the data in the city and across the state? And then also help us start to understand what the governor announced yesterday and where we're headed on all things, please. And welcome, good to see you again.
Sure. Thank you, good to be seen again. Thanks for having me, and I'll just give you a quick update. I think Ben mentioned the declining numbers statewide, nationwide, but certainly on Cape Ann, we're seeing very low numbers here in Gloucester consistently, very few hospitalizations in the last month or so. And where our wastewater is showing very low levels of COVID detection for virus and no level of detection for the variants, the 2 variants of interest that we've been tracking. So these are good things. We're in a really good place right now. Who knows where the future will go with variants and next winter and all of those things, but I feel really confident that for now we see this trend of, as the weather's warming, people are going outside, and there's less variants around and less of the virus around. So there's still adequate resources for vaccine testing, for COVID testing, as well as receiving vaccines. You can now do that on a walk-in basis. We have very high rates of vaccination here in the city. And so we're in a really good place. Things are moving along. We have a partnership with our local community family health center, as well as with Curative, to provide vaccine for whatever groups we're working with, depending on age. So good things happening there. In terms of the announcements from the state, so a little bit of a surprise, but I think they're moving to be in line with where the CDC moved to last week. So, not totally shocking, maybe a little sooner than we expected. And again, it will be a little bit choppy. So as of today, the restriction on masks outdoors for K through 12 has been lifted, as well as for youth athletes. That's defined as under 18. So amateur athletes, adult men's league, women's leagues still are required until the 29th to wear face coverings. Spectators, unfortunately, are still required to wear face coverings until the 29th. So that's a week away. And, there has really never been a lot of transmission outside, especially with children. So this makes sense. It's not an issue of concern, especially given the very low amount of virus in the community right now. So, I'm very comfortable with these recommendations. I don't think the board is going to want to alter too much from where the state's at. I mean, we don't want to alter from that. What we do need to understand more before we make any final decisions or recommendations is what the exceptions are. There will be some exceptions on the 29th to the loosening of restrictions for COVID. So as of the 29th, there will be sort of no more sector specific requirements for people. But we haven't seen the details of the exceptions. The exceptions to this will be for mass transportation, any kind of transportation. So public, the buses, trains, airplanes, healthcare settings will be exempt. So they'll still all need to be wearing masks. Congregate care facilities, and again, we haven't seen a full list of who will be considered congregate care, but it will be things like our homeless shelter, Wellspring, shared communal living. And K through 12 schools indoors will remain an exception. They did say on the call that, you know, things like graduation proms, if they're outdoors, they'll go along with the rest of the state. If they're outdoors, they will not need to have masks or distances or any of the requirements that we've had before. So again, we haven't seen a lot of detail on that. It will be coming out on the 3 o'clock call today. And then I'm sure we'll be getting things in writing, as you will, from DESE over the next day or two. They have promised that. So that will give you some clear guidance from them. But the state yesterday announced that DESE will be adopting these changes as well.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
Jeff, do you have anything to offer to the conversation right now? Or are you just observing and here to answer questions if we have any?
I think Karen gave an excellent recap. I don't have any agenda. I'm just here to respond and answer any questions specific to our settings if anyone has something.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Okay, so let's start with questions. I see Laura has her hand raised.
Thank you. And thank you, Karen and Jeff, for being here. So one of my questions is, so I understand that they're removing masks for outdoors, and there's no distancing requirements. Is that also true? So so kids can be sort of all heads in. We don't have an issue with that. If we were to do, so here's where I'm coming from. I know as a parent of an elementary school child that one of the very exciting things about recess right now is that they're all bringing in little toys and they're all playing together. My guess is that their faces are close to each other, masked. I'm wondering, you know, sort of, are there going to be restrictions on that kind of thing? You know, sort of what are we talking about regulating here, I guess is the broader question.
So are there currently restrictions on separation at recess space? I mean, do they currently have to stay 6 feet apart or 3 feet apart at recess? Or, I mean, I don't know. And so they did not mention yesterday on the very brief call we had, whether the specifics like that. Those will come in your DESE requirements. My understanding would be no, that there would be no additional spacing requirements or masking requirements for outdoor activity for kids. It was kind of a blanket statement like that. But again, I will certainly try to ask this afternoon and get clarity on that, but I think it will come through in your DESE if they're going to add any restrictions. But, you know, I think it will come through more as advisories now, where that's how this will all move towards, is that if you are not vaccinated or, you know, these are advisories. So there may be suggestions that, you know, you try it, but I don't think that it's going to be an area of concern or that they will specify that, but I will ask and see.
Ben, you're muted.
Let me add to that. And of course, folks need to understand that this is happening rapidly. You know that, but let me just share what DESE did share, what DESE put out last night, okay? Because I think it does address the question directly. I'm going to show it on the screen just so everyone can see it. Give me one moment. And this is copied and pasted from their advisory last night. So you'll see the underlined portion here, a second, just blocking my screen, where it says, students no longer have to wear masks when outdoors, even if distance cannot be maintained. Okay, which I think directly answers your question. Adults must continue to wear masks outdoors if distancing cannot be maintained. Okay, so if adults are doing what you were describing, Laura, sharing toys or like looking closely at toys or bugs together, they should be masked, okay? If they can maintain distance. So that's where DESE is. As you can also see at this time, adult students must continue to wear masks indoors. We don't expect that to change. We hope you don't change that. You shouldn't change that. And then of course, other health and safety measures will continue as well. So let me, I can take that down if that's okay.
Thank you. I have more, but I'll wait till others ask their questions.
Just in response to Laura, you had mentioned in your question about playing with objects. And Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, I think on the DESE guidelines on number 2, it states that students are allowed to share objects and they don't need to be cleaned or disinfected in between use. That goes into effect today as well.
Yeah, that's also, and I don't, yes, so yes, that, it does exactly say that. Again, I can share this as well. Give me a moment here. And I'm sorry if you don't all have this document. Here is what Melissa's referring to. And I can increase that size if it's helpful. And that's, that's very much in line with the notion that, sharing things, I'm not sure this really was Laura's question, it was more about proximity, I think, but that sharing, that surfaces aren't what's transmitting COVID. There is, and then, yeah, let me stop that sharing.
Thank you. Sam?
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Karen, for being here. I really have a question specific to logistics in relation to our educators. And it's hard because I realize that, there aren't teachers here necessarily to answer this question, but Ben, you might have a sense of how people are feeling. I'll say, sort of as a parent of young children, the one thing that's kept me sane throughout this is just having consistent expectations of mask wearing. Like, my kids just wear masks where we go. It's just been consistent. And so they've gotten really good at it and used to it. And so that consistency is sort of shifting very quickly. And so I guess I'm wondering, from an educator's perspective, how are they feeling with managing that? And then in addition to that, if kids are still required to wear them inside, what's the plan for storing masks? I know that seems like a really silly question, but it's actually sort of a big deal for little kids to try to manage where to put their masks and how to keep them safe so that they can go then back into the building and wear them safely. And I wouldn't want that responsibility on the educators, in addition to everything else that we're asking them to do. So logistically, how does this look coming and going from the school?
Sam, I personally haven't had a chance since last night to discuss that with any principals or any staff members. I think in terms of taking care of folks' belongings, that's a combination, depending on the age of the kid, about, who's responsible or who helps with that, right? So obviously younger kids, the teachers do take a lot of responsibility for, teaching them where to stay, where to keep things, where to store things, where to, come back to things that are, will still be there when they come back. That's everything from, pencils to hats, to coats, to shoes, to, snow gear, that sort of thing. So your teachers will definitely have a hand in, but for many folks, I think it's pockets, or, for kids who have pockets, but there's no plan on that at this point. That's something that probably students and teachers, will work out depending on the age, the classroom, what's happening, people, what clothing people have, stuff like that, because not everyone has pockets, for example, right? So that's one example that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. The one thing I'll say about that is my kids' preschool, they have hooks, right? See, it's this very simple solution, right? But I think by just saying today we're going to be done with masks, it doesn't really give educators a time to plan sort of logistically how that looks. So my only hesitation is making sure that educators feel like, okay, we know what we're doing. We know where the kids' masks are. Kids know where their masks are, so that before they walk in the door to come back into the building, they're masked. I just think that that's a big piece of the puzzle here, so that educators don't feel overwhelmed and kids aren't confused, because I think this is a big shift.
It absolutely correct on that. I really, really wish that the governor had said a week from now, because that the questions you're asking, which are good ones, are stuff that our schools and school people can figure out in no time.
Right.
But they could use a little time, right?
They need some time to figure that out.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a very good point made. And then again, I have confidence that our folks will figure it out, but they, could use a little time, right?
Yes, that's my point. I think we just need to give them a minute.
And we do have plenty of inventory for child and adult sized disposable masks if they do become misplaced or become dirty at recess.
Joel? You have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to make sure I understand the scope of what we're really wrestling with today. So, at most, if we took a vote today to adopt the minimum standards put before us, on a practical level, the students in school, in the building, their day doesn't change. Their spacing doesn't change, their mask use doesn't change, their locations for eating doesn't change. This really only affects in school the sharing of items, and then recess, and then and sports for the older children who are playing school related sports. But am I correct in that? That would be the sea change here, because I appreciate that we're having this meeting. I think it was appropriate, but obviously the legal term of this meeting is emergency. But that kind of, like, for people who aren't versed in open meeting law, that sounds a little more dire than it really is. So at most, I would confirm that the most change we could make would be for sharing of items in the school and behavior at recess plus sports. Is that correct?
Joel, if I can respond to that, it was brought up last night that we have some classes that are taught outdoors currently. So that would pertain to outdoor classrooms as well.
Okay.
And that was
excellent.
also mentioned in one of the orders. And that was one of the concerns that was brought, and that was one of the reasons for having this meeting so quickly, because we do have outdoor classrooms happening right now.
Okay, thank you. That's a good clarification. So, let's see. Tell me. I have a question. Another question, but I can wait for going around again. What do you want to do
No,
this?
you can continue, and then we'll go to Laura next.
Okay, so Karen, you're our local health expert. When you heard about the way in which the CDC and then the state government was suggesting standards be relaxed, did you think that's too much, that's too little, or that sounds about right?
I'm comfortable with where we're at, especially given our local data and given the time of year. If we were in December heading into winter flu season, that's a different equation. But I think given where we're at and given that there's very little transmission occurring, and there's never been a lot of transmission outside for youth, I think it's a good thing. And I think when you weigh up, again, what the kids trying to run around a lacrosse field with a mask on their face, it's not necessary, it's extremely uncomfortable, and I am in support of and in terms of logistics, I mean, I don't know the answer. It's a great question, and your crew may need time. But from what I hear anecdotally about people that try to work with children outside, is that the larger challenge is keeping the face mask on them for sports teams and kids and recess. So I definitely agree you have to work through the logistics of where, but there's other hassles with the way it's currently set up. So I'm comfortable. It's a little sooner than we thought. It's a little faster than we thought. Again, it would have been nice to have a little notice. May 29th is 10 days away. So, and that's a complete relaxing of really most sectors will be moving to a pre-COVID existence with indoor dining, no capacity limits, shopping, things that, if people are vaccinated, our rates stay high. I think we're good with that for now. But if, further down the track, it's very hard to say. But right now I am comfortable with those recommendations. And I think our board will be as well and support those fully. Except again, for these high-risk settings, it is appropriate in congregate living, in especially senior long-term care facilities, nursing homes, that masks continue to be worn at all times. So I think those are important. I may not agree with all of the things in there. I'm not sure the K through 12 is tough. I mean, the kids weren't vaccinated indoors. Most of those younger kids are not vaccinated, but yet there's very little transmission and they're not the spreaders. And so but it's something we live with. That's fine. It is the way it is. And so I think most of what's in there and most of what the exceptions will be fairly logical, following the science, and will be comfortable. But I'm definitely comfortable outdoors with youth not wearing masks.
Thank you.
I'd like to add that we
Oh,
are
sorry.
also,
Go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
I'd like to add that we are basing this decision off of the snapshot of information we have today, right now. If this changes, we may make adjustments. So just remember that this is a fluid situation, and if the need arises, we will respond, and we will respond effectively and quickly.
Thank you. Kathy? Oh, sorry. I said Laura, but Kathy, go ahead, because you haven't asked a question yet, and then we'll go to Laura. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. So Karen, I just want to understand the data a little bit also, just to clarify. It sounds like the data is showing that, as you just said, the transmission between younger kids is extremely low. The risk to them sounds, like it's lower than adults, right? So we're now, I think it's probably good that the data has been separated into these categories so that we know adults are still, adults still need to be careful when we're, close or whatever, but that the data on children has informed these particular steps at the state level. So that's a question, just to confirm.
Yes, and I think Desi makes reference in those slides that that Ben just put up, that the data continues to show that children are not as susceptible, the symptoms aren't as bad, they're not as, they don't transmit under a certain age, they're not as effective transmitters. But again, given community transmission is very low, yes, I think that is what that's based on, and it hasn't changed. But as Jeff said, it's evolving, and we're learning more all the time. Did that answer your question, Kathy?
It did. Yes, thank you.
Laura?
Thanks. So two things on that, Jeff and Carol. So firstly, what I'm hearing you say, and I really appreciate it from both of you, is that like this is fluid, things can change. So to the committee, I'm just wondering if we make, whatever we vote on today, do we put a time frame on that? Are we saying this is our policy going into the fall? I mean, Karen brought up a great point. When we go into flu season, or we go into, when we go into the winter, when we go into, are we, is this something we're going to revisit sort of automatically as things change? So that's a question sort of for the committee. And secondarily, or not, secondly, we of course have a whole population in our schools under 12. So they're not going to be vaccinated for the foreseeable future, right? So I just, as you said, Karen, things are opening up completely on May 29th, right? We don't know what the numbers will look like once people are eating and drinking and going to concerts and things like that. Do you feel like if our community transmission starts to go up, whether it's in the summer or in the fall, given that change, this would be something we should revisit?
So a couple things. I would say to your first question, I mean, it's for you guys to decide, but if you are generally comfortable, what we've done in public health is follow the state's lead and then the exception is to redecide it locally and independently. And we really haven't done that with very much at all during the past year. We try very hard to stay consistent with our colleagues, the guidance coming out of the state, and what other area communities are doing. And we felt that that's important. It also gives us a level of support from the state that we're not sort of out on our own on an island. And usually the state's work is based in science. So we have trusted it and largely followed in step with it. So that's one way to approach do we have to keep revisiting, revoting all the time, is and maybe just make your policy more general that you will follow the state's guidance unless the school committee decides to take it up otherwise. And then you don't have to keep rewriting your policies. Because yeah, it will, things will continue to change. So your question about if things open up and we see numbers spike, yeah, of course we will watch that. But I don't feel, and we don't have any reason to think that will happen this summer because of the very high vaccination rates protecting the community, and the outdoors and just the low level of virus in our community. We are not expecting to see any sort of outbreaks or community-wide spread. Of course, you may have an isolated group, a business, a household who is, the virus moves through, people continue to travel. So we know that, and we continue to see that even now. When people travel, they come back, that's when we see COVID. And we also know that only 10% of the world is vaccinated right now. So we're not out of the woods as a nation, as a world here. We still have a lot of transmission worldwide and people not being vaccinated. But here locally, here in Massachusetts, we have very high rates of vaccinated adults, which is giving us a lot of protection through these next few months, as well as low numbers of community-wide virus. So those two things together make us think we're pretty safe for a while. I mean, a new variant could come in and change things, but right now that's not expected. We're not planning for that. I think the state is pretty comfortable that we're in a good place right now. I think the tougher questions will be a year from now when we're understanding how long the vaccine works, what kind of booster you need, how frequently, all of those questions. And if at that point, the rest of the world has not upped their vaccination rates and we begin to see worldwide movement of some of these variants, that can continue to be a problem for us. But hopefully that won't happen. Hopefully we'll keep our vaccination rates high, and those vaccines will be protective against most variants, or offer some level of protection like our flu vaccine does. So even if you get it, it won't be as severe.
Jill?
Does that answer your question?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like the fluidity of this, I know, for instance, the Indian variant seems to be impacting children much, much more. Doesn't appear to be here yet, but it's in Europe. So people are going to travel and it's going to be here soon. So I'm just, I know you have your eye on all these things, but I just know that children under 12 there's no risk for those children, and it may change.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Joe?
Thanks. To answer, Laura's question of the committee and kind of echoing what Karen just said, my hope today, if we decide on a general course, would be to, make a more general motion that also enables some agency for our superintendent in connection with our, Jeff and with Karen, to, if there are on-the-fly changes that need to be implemented, to give them some capacity to enact it more quickly than we are able to as a kind of cumbersome, lumbering public body. And then with, verification or approval from us. So if Ben sees something's going awry, he says, hey, O'Malley, mask up tomorrow. We don't have to call an emergency meeting for him to do that. We just have to, verify we were okay with it and ratify it at our next meeting, something like that. So that'd be my inclination as far as format goes to address the fluidity, especially if we're going to open things up today to allow our experts and our admin to much more quickly close back down if the need arises than we could as a body.
Joel, I couldn't agree with you more. I think we're in a difficult position because we put that specific language in our policy saying that it could only be rescinded at the school committee level. And I don't think other districts are struggling like we are so much having a quick meeting because of that, so I agree with you 100% in taking care of this for future changes as well. So we've asked a lot of questions. We've got a lot of good answers. We've had some materials to read. Does everyone feel comfortable at this point? Ben?
Yeah, there's one complication on this in terms of, and Karen, it'd be great to get your suggestion on this. MIA has also come, the Sports Medicine Committee of the MIAA, just within, I think, the last couple hours, has come out supporting the changes. They are, and what they're also very clear is that local, level decisions are really where the decisions are made, not just on their guidance. But Karen, and I can show this on my screen if folks want, are saying that spectators, chaperones, coaches, referees, essentially adults who are at outdoor sporting events, are not required to wear mask and face coverings, which I think is contrary to what the governor's saying, at least now. That may change on May 29th, right? Or, so, and then what's important for me is that we make a safe decision, but also we make a decision that can be sort of followed through by our schools. And one of the real concerns here, as we've seen, is, there's a rule that most people insist on not following. Our folks can sort of be in this sort of difficult situation trying to enforce that when maybe the health is, anyway, I'm worried about the contentious issues around masks if we're not clear about it. So I don't have a preference of which way, but I want us to be clear about what it is so our folks can announce that, advertise that sort of thing. Am I being clear on that dilemma?
Yeah, I think it's, did you want me to?
Oh, go ahead, Karen.
I think it is one of the gray areas, stuff changed today and then in 10 days, there's going to be another change. That's weird. And it's going to be problematic probably for you either way, a little bit messy. But again, this is how it's gone for the whole year. And on the 29th, what DPH told us yesterday is spectators will not be required to wear their masks outdoors. Again, outdoor events only. Until then, as of today, it's just the youth athletes. So it's curious that MIAA has adopted yet another, something different from what the state, and we don't know what DESI's saying because I haven't seen that yet in writing about the sports stuff. So I imagine, I don't know, will DESI comment on your athletic stuff as well, or
Typically
anyway,
they
I
do.
think we need to see in writing what the state puts out, and maybe the MIAA is saying that spectators as of the 29th don't have to wear it. Maybe they've chosen a date that everybody's going to go together on the 29th and they want to hold the kids. I'm not really sure what they're saying, and I'm not sure what their authority is. So you guys would have to decide on that. Do they recommend, or do you have to follow their rules?
Yeah, no, it's very clear. Two things. I can also share this and I'll send it along to folks. 1 second here, just so people can see it. This is right here. So just to highlight a couple of things is that their guidelines, very clear, their guidelines are effective May 18th. So they're saying now. The other piece, and here is the place where they talk about outdoor spectators and adults are not required. Indoors they are, but they're very, very clear about where the control is and where the decision is, and it's got to be made at the local level by the school committee here, or so it's very much guidelines. But I just want you to know that's out there, and already Principal Cook and Athletic Director LaFata have reached out to me, making sure that we can do something that's clear.
Yeah, I think you'll run into problems with that if other towns are following the state's advice, where next week it's going to be really confusing. It is also possible that between yesterday afternoon or yesterday morning when this was announced and today, the state has changed their mind to let all outdoor spectators and athletes not wear the mask. So we will find out officially at 3 o'clock today. They will tell us, and then they'll put things in writing. So I think probably we should sit tight just a minute longer on that to see if maybe the agencies have standardized their recommendations, which they do try to do, and hopefully they will. And if they haven't, I don't know, you'll just have to.
Okay, so we only have a few minutes left before we have to end this meeting because we have another. So I'm just going to try to bring this together. I know there's more questions and we can probably talk about this for hours, but I just kind of want to bring it together a little bit. So the issue before us now is regarding students outside, recess, outdoor classrooms, wearing masks or not wearing masks. You know, I know the spectator issue is another issue, but I don't think we need to resolve that today. The reason for having this meeting so soon is for the superintendent and his administrative team to provide guidance to teaching staff and everyone else who needs to on how to handle the fact that we have conflicting regulations between the state. There's parents that have probably told their kids this morning that they don't have to wear masks today, but yet we have a policy that says so. So I think we should try to just focus on the smaller picture regarding those issues right now, and then have another discussion at our next school committee meeting regarding everything else, because we're going to be getting a lot of recommendations coming from all sorts of agencies, I'm sure. In addition, I'm sure we're going to hear from parents, and rightfully so. I'm sure there's many parents celebrating today, and I'm sure there's many parents petrified today. So if we focus on what we need to do today, I think we can get through that issue and then look at the bigger picture and what's coming. I mean, think about it. In a week, it's going away. In less than a month, we're not going to be in the state of emergency anymore. So things are happening very, very quickly, and there's going to be a lot of changes coming quickly. I mean, even the fact, are we even going to be allowed to have Zoom meetings after the 15th if the state of emergency is no longer in effect? I mean, there's a lot coming. So I don't know if anyone's willing to make a motion now so that we can get our discussion going, because we have to have that within the next 15 minutes.
So I make a motion that we authorize school administration to to align student and teacher mask policy, item sharing policy, and otherwise academic and athletic policy to align with current state guidance, and further empower the administration to continue to adjust compliance as the state guidance continues to change, and to further empower the administration to decide to tighten regulations on an as-needed basis with subsequent ratification by the school committee without further need for the school committee to convene in order for these changes to take place between now and the end of the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. I'd like to offer an amendment to that, Joel, just to add to it, not to change it, just that when those decisions are made by administration, that it is brought forward to the school committee at the following meeting after that change has been made for a discussion and approval of the change of policy, because it is our policy.
I second the amendment.
Great. So we have a motion, a second, an amendment with a second. So we just need to vote on the amendment and then go into the discussion. So Maria, can we do a roll call vote on the amendment only to the motion that's on the table? It's not a decision, it's just amending the motion.
Sure. Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
and Mayor Taken.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is on the table, and now we will open it up. Are there any further amendments before we open up for discussion? Seeing none. Okay, who would like to start? Sam, I saw your hand go up first.
I just have a clarification question. So Joel mentioned that athletics is going to align with this. Is this right? With the state guidance?
To, yeah, authorize the administration to align athletics with it as well.
Okay, so the state guidance is different from the MIAA, and I think that's the point that Ben was trying to make. And so I think it's important to make that distinction, because MIAA is saying starting today that coaches and spectators don't have to wear masks, but state guidance says the 29th. So I think we really need to be sure that we're clear on what we're voting for.
My motion was made to give the state authorities, you know, the respect and kind of treat them as the experts. And with all due respect to the MIA, I want to listen to the state government before I listen to the MIA on health issues.
Okay, thank you, because I have a lot more questions about the MIAA and whether or not coaches are going to be wearing masks, and those are conversations that we can have at our next school committee meeting, because we'll be, I think, having one before the 29th. Is that right?
We have one on the 26th.
Okay. So I fully trust the data and the science behind, removing masks for the outdoors. I'm worried about the logistical piece. I feel like it just puts educators in our schools in sort of a difficult position to do things on a whim. And it also confuses children. So I do have my reservations about that. I would prefer it to not go into effect today. I don't know if we have the authority to sort of decide on it, giving the teachers and the educators in the schools a couple days. That's sort of a question. Or does it have to be today?
My motion was not specific.
Okay.
So the purpose of this meeting is to give guidance to the administration today on how to proceed.
But we
So
wouldn't.
I took Joe's motion, and I could be wrong, but as I see it, he's asking that we make the changes to adjust to represent what the state is coming out with, effective as of the vote.
Meaning
Yeah, I
that Ben would then be authorized. So if Ben decides to send an all school email saying starting Thursday, starting Friday, starting Monday, I leave it to the admin. We're saying, we're taking the hands off, saying, okay, we're going to align with the state guidance, and that's up for the admin to implement. If they think they can implement it in one day, do it in one day. If they can implement it in 2 days, do it in 2 days. With a drop dead date for me of next week.
So okay, I just want to ask Ben if he wants that decision, because this is a school committee policy, and now we're telling Ben to make the decision. I find a problem with that. It seems to me we're discussing an answer today, not giving the superintendent discretion on our policy to implement when he thinks so, because to me, that's going to create further confusion. But that's just my thoughts.
So I think you're asking me a direct question. I'm okay with you setting a date, and I'll of course implement whatever you vote on and approve. I'd be
Laura?
happy to have you guys set. I'd be happy to have you guys set a date. In other words.
Right, I know you want a date.
So
I can see it.
I think that one of the real benefits of what Gloucester Schools has done this year is to be consistent and to have consistent expectations for everyone. That was one of the lessons I learned early on here. So I can't speak, the science all seems clear to me, but there are social implications here of making a decision at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, and saying okay. So personally, I agree with Samantha as far as the logistics are concerned. I think we're looking at very different ages. We're looking at kindergartners, we're looking at 8th graders, we're looking at high schoolers. It's different in every classroom. Despite the fact that the CDC and DESE and the state decided to sort of spring this with no warning at all, I think that we benefit by being clear with this community, by saying, this is this is what has come from those above us. We hear this, we understand this. On this day, we will prepare now for this. And then on this day, maybe Monday, maybe that will be our policy. But from my perspective, both as a school committee member, as a parent, to sort of change this in the middle of the day without any preparation at all for our classrooms and for our families feels like sending a message that can get very, very easily confused.
So I'd like to amend my motion. I would amend my motion that the implementation I spoke of in my original motion must be implemented no later than beginning of school day, Monday of next week, and leave it to the administration. If they can do it sooner, but the drop dead date would be Monday morning. Our decision takes effect, no later than that. No seconds.
Go ahead, Laura.
I just have a question I see Greg is on here. I know Jeff is in the schools and Ben. You guys are the educators and the people in the schools. Please tell me you know, how does this look different, you know, in an elementary school, in the middle school, or in the high school? Like, I don't think it's all the same. And so I really want to understand from your perspective as educators, how, you know, what would be best practice to make this happen in a consistent and understandable way?
Who's that question directed to?
To either any of the educators or people in school. So Jeff, Ben, or Greg, who seems to be on here, but I don't know.
Ben, you're muted.
Ben.
So see if Greg wants to chime in, but I mean, I literally have not had a moment to talk to principals about when, you know, other than some text last night, you know, when to do this. Okay. I haven't had the conversation. Okay. I can see a range of folks saying from, you know, not a problem, we got this, because that's what a lot of folks say in Gloucester, okay, which I really appreciate, to, you know, need a few days. I honestly don't know the answer to the question. You know, so I need a conversation, or need Greg to have a conversation with principals to get a sense of that. You know, I'm sure that you know, our teachers and our principals work very closely together. I'm sure that principals have, you know, had lots of conversations about it today, if not last night by text, you know, so, but I don't have that information at this point. I'm sorry, I just don't.
Kathy? You're muted. You're muted, Kathy.
You know, the governor came out yesterday, and I realize it's kind of quick to turn around on a dime. I think no matter what, it's not going to be smooth. As Ben just said, it's going to be different at the high school. The kids are going to be ecstatic to be able to walk out of school and not have a mask on and participate in their sports. And so that may be less messy. And I think to put James in the position of delaying it as a principal, it's not a popular place, and it's not a popular place to put Ben in that position either. We've heard from our Department of Health, Karen Carroll, that she's comfortable with the science. I have let, you know, every decision we've made throughout the summer and the school year has been based on science. And so I have faith that our administrators will come up with protocols and things to handle those logistical issues. But I think to put them also in a position of delaying it and having to deal with parents who are on one side or the other is really not fair to them. And so they might say it's going to be bumpy because we don't know what we're going to do when kindergartners don't know where their mask is, but please bear with us. I think that's a better message as a principal if I were a principal. And I think, you know, I think at the middle school it'll be probably more similar than not to the high school. So I just think science has guided us, and I think we have to go with state level recommendation and you know, and the change. And if there are certain situations that administrators or teachers are having trouble with, then I think they can all work through it at a school level. So I don't see a reason to delay the actual implementation, just knowing we all have a little patience as a community, both families and students, to understand this is kind of a quick change, and there may be certain things that have to be figured out as we go.
So I just want to speak for a little bit because we're going to move the vote real soon. So Kathy, I agree with you. I think no matter when this is implemented, there's going to be problems. I mean, everything is coming fast and furiously, like we said, you know, within a week, everyone has their masks off. A couple weeks later, no more state of emergency. I'm not too worried about the logistics of the masks because I think kids will put them in their pockets. I think kids can put them around their wrists. I mean, there's loops on most of the masks. I think that would be figured out. We heard from Jeff that there's plenty of masks to replace masks. I know in my office, I probably have 10,000 masks just for 20 employees because there's so many masks available. So I feel like if that is an easy solution to fix if a mask gets lost at recess and needs to be replaced. But I do feel for the administration today and think they need some guidance today. And I think putting it off is going to just create more controversy with the parents that don't want their children to have to wear a mask. But what I like about this issue to begin with is, and what I always fall back to as a school committee member, I believe in choices. I strongly believe a parent can raise their child in whatever capacity they want to, educate their child in whatever capacity they want to. And I also feel if they want their child to still wear a mask at recess, they can tell them. And for those parents who don't want their children to wear masks or feel safe, then they have that option too. So I know I am in support of the motion that is currently on the table because it does give parents choices and they can have those conversations with their kids tonight, whether they feel their child should wear a mask at recess or not, just like going forward for the rest of their lives. I mean, it might be a great thing that we all wear masks during flu season going forward, whether the state recommends it or not, because they've clearly shown to help with the transmission of flu in addition to COVID. So I'm going to support the motion as it stands for those reasons, because I believe it's a parent's choice, and this motion gives the parents the choice of deciding today whether their child should wear a mask. Safathia, did you have,
I had my hand up. Yes, I do.
sorry, Safathia hasn't said anything yet, so let's get
I'm just withdrawing
Safathia.
my amendment because no one seconded it. We're having a weird discussion on a non-seconded amendment. So we're gonna withdraw
Well,
it.
your motion, I'm sorry, did you withdraw your motion?
Just my I had an amendment that did
Right.
not get, and then we started talking, so I'm pulling it off the table to make sure that we were talking.
Okay, yeah, no, I noticed there wasn't a second, so it wasn't for a discussion, but thank you for reminding me. Safathia, did you want to say anything?
You are two attorneys. The state's saying one thing, they're all saying one thing. Can we legally tell a parent on the 29th that their child's not coming in with a mask, that they have to put a mask?
The state guidance is saying
The
no
different
masks, so
things
there's no
about-
law.
One at
ahead.
a time, because I have to go on, I'm gonna go with the lieutenant governor's meeting with the MMA to find out exactly what's gonna happen, after the state of emergency, which is even scarier. So go ahead.
I obviously don't know this yet, but we expect the indoor masks to maintain.
Yeah,
Okay, so we're just talking about outdoor masks here.
right.
Right,
But again, that could be different too. But at this point, no change indoor masks, only outdoor masks, including athletics.
Right. The fact is, that's what I'm saying. I mean, once that everyone else is doing it, can you tell a parent, well, no, you know what, they're watching they have their mask on while they're watching the kid, and the kid doesn't want to play with the mask because they already had problems with it. Are we allowed to? Legally, are we allowed to?
We're allowed to let people wear a mask, and arguably, in the same way that we say a student is not allowed to wear a baseball hat or sunglasses, or the student must wear a shirt.
Well,
must
that's
wear-
why you need to do the policy now. Let the superintendent make the decision. If it's going to change or COVID, you heard Karen, you heard the science. I know it's hard. You just said it yourselves. The parents will teach their child, they'll do that. The fact is that you have Ben, if there was all of a sudden it climbed up, him and Jeff will say, you know what, we need another emergency right now because all of a sudden we have 25 COVID, or we have this, or we have that you can do it. You know what, give him the opportunity to continue this. It's the 29th. By that, they'll get more facts, more things. And this way, put it in the policy. Now, I really have to go. I don't know if you're gonna have a quorum if I leave. So if you do, then that's fine. But put it in like you wanted to. Remove that on the on May 29th, Ben, by that time he'll hear from the teachers. You think we're not going to hear from them if there's a problem, or you're going to hear from coaches or moms? You'll hear from them. And by that time, you know what? He already has the ruling that he can continue. He talks daily to Karen every day. There always are, or someone from the Board of Health. So Jeff's right there. He gets the same thing at 3 o'clock. So you know what? I really think that we can discuss this all day, who's right or wrong. But this is the guidelines. Let's follow the guidelines. Let's give, don't put it on the burden of the principals. You have a superintendent for that reason. You have a Board of Health for that reason. You have the mayor for that reason. So the superintendent, he needs to lead, he needs to follow, he knows what the protocols, and then he can always call an emergency meeting anytime he wants if he feels that, it's not working. But Jeff is here saying, it was not in his head, saying, yes, the parents will say, and they'll teach their children what you can do. I can understand, the fear of, they're going to be playing together. Not for nothing, but when COVID was their highest, everyone's at the beach playing with beach balls. What they weren't supposed to with the kids, they were outside, they were on the swings. Don't touch the swings, and they were all over the place. Okay. So yes, they'll play with things. Their classes outside. The teachers, we've trusted the teachers to be in these classrooms. We trusted the teachers with these children. Trust the teachers. If they feel uncomfortable, they will let us know. If they feel they can handle it, they will let us know. I really have to go. So
Can we move the vote now?
I
so
was just
that
gonna
the
say, let's
mayor
move
can
the vote,
be
yes.
here?
Can someone
Please.
read it again, please, so we know exactly what we're voting on, since it's been some confusion?
So my motion was to instruct the administration to align academic, athletic, and all other school functions with the current state guidance, specific as to athletics with the state guidance, not the MIAA guidance, and to further empower the superintendent to continue to adjust this implementation as the recommendations from the state government continue to evolve and change, and to empower the superintendent to, without prior notice to us, add restrictions and then call for us to ratify them after the fact. If in his opinion and the opinion of the health director, further restrictions are needed on an immediate basis.
Thank you, Joe. Maria might be reaching out for you to say that again to get it in writing. Thank you for that.
And I have a question about that before we vote, because I just can't. So does
Okay,
that then take
Quickly,
away?
what is the question,
Does
Laura?
that then take away the school committees? Like if, Ben, I'm all for empowering Ben. I trust Ben. But if, if the school committee, does that then take away the school committee's power to, at a meeting in session, say, we see things happening we don't like, we're going to change the policy?
Absolutely not. We always, in the same way that we were kind of initially said, you can't change this without us. Today, we'd say you can change it without us. And if we want to go back the other way, anyone, and like Melissa did, there is in Robert's rules, the ability to call an emergency meeting without prior 48-hour notice. As long as I think maybe it's any 2 or 3 members can call the meeting and force the rest of the quorum to arrive.
And
So
Laura,
this-
just so you know, my motion to amend was that any changes, the superintendent would have to bring it to the school committee at the following meeting, scheduled meeting. And we, like Jill said, we can always schedule a emergency meeting or a meeting within 48 hours sooner if we have concerns with it. So his authority is good until the next meeting of the school committee.
And we decide when that
And we
is.
decide whether we're gonna make changes or continue on.
And Ben, are you comfortable with this?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, call, moving the vote. Maria, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes,
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
and Mayor Taken.
Yes.
Excellent dialogue, and like it's been said
Have a
many
good day,
times,
everyone.
we could talk about this for a
Okay.
couple hours, and I'm sure we're going to be spending a lot more time on this issue, and I'm sure we're going to be hearing from the public in different capacities, and we welcome that. But as of today, Ben, it looks like you have the direction you need for outdoor recess and outdoor learning environments and sports, and the conversation will continue. I thank you all for the very short notice, but I think the school will at least has the direction it needs for the next couple days until we meet again and see what else comes out from the state and any other agency that wants to weigh in and make
I move
changes.
to adjourn.
second,
Roll call?
Who seconded? I'm sorry.
I did,
Yeah.
Maria.
Thank you. Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes,
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes. See you in the next meeting in 30 seconds.
bye, everyone.
Good night, all. Good day.
Yeah,
Good day.